Hello. I love it when I read a new author and they give such a refreshing and different point of view of the world and way of framing it within a kind of narrative that I've never come across before. I think that is so exciting, and that is why I enjoy reading a lot of different debut books. And I think one of the best debut novels that I read last year was Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. This incredibly powerful and moving story of an individual who's an artist and a wife and a mother who is suffering from terminal cancer, and how it shows her journey and the effect that has upon her and her family by showing not only her voice and giving the perspective of her family members, but also the perspective of the illness, or something that is like the illness that is traveling alongside her, that is both part of her and separate from her. It is reading this book was a total revelation, and I think it's such an exciting new voice, and I was so happy that this was longlisted for the Booker Prize last year, and it's really exciting seeing it get even more prize attention. So I want to talk about yet another book award today, and which is running at the moment, which is the Sunday Times Charlotte Aiken Young Writer of the Year Award. And there are 4 authors and books listed for this prize. So one of them is Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, and these are the 3 others. So I wanted to go through and talk about each of these books briefly to give like an overview of this year's prize. So this award awards a single book of fiction, nonfiction, or poetry that's been published in the past year and is by an author who is between 18 and 35 years old. The winner will receive £10,000. So this is like a wonderful boost and like encouragement for new authors, and some writers that have won in the past are Jay Bernard and Max Porter and Sally Rooney. So it's really launched the careers of some great new talent. And as a kind of different way of following this award, I'm going to go to the award ceremony tomorrow night. So I thought after giving this overview, then I'll show some footage from the award ceremony. And I'm also going to see the authors in conversation. So that'll be really exciting too, and I'll try to film some footage from that if possible to show at the end. So going into the other books that are listed for this year's prize, there is Super Infinite by Katherine Rundell, which also won the Baillie Gifford Prize for nonfiction last year, and I talked about that award in a previous video. And I've also talked before about how much I enjoyed this really creative and new kind of biography of the poet John Donne, and who lived such a varied and interesting life, and how that was expressed in his poetry, and how his poetry was even constructed and formed and passed around. The way she describes that is so interesting. So this is such a fascinating biography, even if you don't know of or like John Donne's poetry. Reading about his life is really, really interesting. Then there is a novel called Oxblood by Tom Benn, which takes place in the city of Manchester in the mid-80s and is about a family. The men of this family were involved in the city's sort of criminal underground world, but those men have died. They've left behind different generations of women who are still feeling the effects of these men's criminal activities and the impact that they have made upon the city. So it follows their different lives, their different tribulations as they are trying to continue their lives forward. So that sounds really interesting. And then there's a book called Larger Than an Orange by Lucy Burns, which is sort of part memoir, part poetry, part nonfiction narrative, following the time before and after in abortion, when describing the experience of the author who finds that the actually going through this experience is so different than the sort of larger political issues and being involved with these larger political issues surrounding abortion beforehand, how going through that completely changed her point of view of the world. And so it describes and follows that experience in really emotional detail. So yeah, those are the 4 books, the 4 authors. It's going to be really interesting to see who they choose as the winner. But yeah, I'll make a vlog and follow along to get some more information and point of view about this year's award, and we will shortly find out who actually won.
Katherine Rundell has written a book called Super Infinite: The Transformations of John Donne, which has already won a very big prize, and in an evening when we're talking about different forms and doing different things, memoir, is it a novel, is it this, is it that, at first sight you might think, okay, well, it's a literary biography, but it's not really, is it? It's sort of different from the normal literary biography. John Donne, I mean, to me, he's always been one of the great poets, and I thought everyone thought that, but you're worried that people won't think that anymore.
Well, I think it does say, the book says it is both a biography and an act of evangelism. And it is an argument that you can find in Donne. Visions of love and visions of sex. It argues essentially that Donne is the finest poet of sex in the English language. And that many of the visions, especially, I'm 35, many of the visions of sex and desire that I was offered in my teen years and 20s by the media are so thin, they have such a paucity to them, and tap them and they ring like money. And Donne suggests a different vision of sex, a vision of love and of passion that acknowledges glory and doubt and spite, but most of all, strangeness. And this is the thing that marked Donne out from his time, and the thing that people went after him for. He was both the most copied out, so he didn't publish much, he was copied out in manuscript over and over. He was probably the most copied out love poet of his time, and he was also the most criticized, because he didn't stay by the rules of the time. It was a time where it was a very love and dove moment when he started writing in about 1590. So Philip Sidney compared his lover's cheeks unto 2 white doves, and then later her shoulders are unto 2 white doves, and you get to the point where you're like, other birds are available. But for Donne, he was saying, look, it's breathtakingly unlikely that your love would be like a dove. Your love is much more likely to be unsettling and vertiginous and triumphant. It might be like something that gets under your skin and transforms the person you thought you were, but it's very unlikely to be the colour of roses. And that made him unpopular, but it also made him great, I think.
Yes, and certainly when I read Donne when I was about 18 or 17, 18, I thought, God, this guy is fantastic. I mean, he's speaking to me very directly. He became a great hero of mine, and I sort of modelled my whole persona as a student on it. I was terribly disappointed to learn from your book that a lot of his love and sex scenes in his poems are probably not based on actual experience at all. Was I barking up the wrong tree?
So it's tradition on the Academy to divide the love poetry and the sex poetry, and a lot of the early poetry that he was writing in his late teens and early 20s, it's very unlikely that they were written for women. They were probably written for a very small group of very hyper-educated young men who were doing a kind of papery merry-go-round. And it's not to say that I think they were virgins, but it was so difficult to sleep with women of your own class at the point, because the more wealth you might inherit, the more strenuously your virginity was protected. There were forms of contraception. Most of them are harrowing, like beaver extract ground up with hen's teeth. They're just like, oh no. And so, while it's unlikely that Donne was a virgin by the time he married his wife in his mid-20s, it's also very unlikely that the poetry he was writing was for women. And some of it, they used to be taught as if it was, especially in the 80s, poetry like The Flea. The Flea begins, mark but this flea, and mark in this, how little that which thou deniest me is. It's first sucked thee, and now sucks me, and in this flea our two bloods mingled be. So he's imagining a little flea running between the two of them. When it was published, after his death, the S of it sucked me first and now sucks thee was published with the long S, which looks like an F. So that line was meant to...
We can work it out.
You can work it out. It was meant to signal something slightly different. So there was all this poetry that was laid out mostly at the floor of other boys in a bid to cast themselves as these kind of wild rakes. But then there is real love poetry. You know, we don't know what he wrote for his wife, Anne Moore, but he puns on her surname, Moore. And there's this one poem called Love's Growth, and it begins, I scarce believe my love to be so pure as I had thought it was, because it doth endure vicissitude and season as the grass. Methinks I lied all winter when I swore my love was infinite, if spring maked it more. And that more means that though billions of people have read his poetry, and though you can go to huge conferences and you can get a mug with his face and the words, let's get metaphysical, it was different for her.
Yeah, great pun too.
I've made it here to the announcement party, which has this rather fabulous view because it's on this high up floor. And so I've got a glass of bubbly and I'm going to go look around and mingle.
Hello, I am delighted to be hosting my first Sunday Times Charlotte Aiken Young Writer of the Year Award as literary editor of the Sunday Times. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at Skylight tonight. One of the most important and unique things about our Young Writer Award is that it seeks out newness in whatever form it arrives. It cuts across all genres and modes of expression: fiction, non-fiction, poetry, experimental, historical, you name it. Over the years, the prize has done a great job of predicting who will make a marked impact on the culture. Past winners include Zadie Smith, Simon Armitage, Robert Macfarlane, Max Porter, Sally Rooney, Sarah Waters, the list just goes on and on. There is so much hunger for ideas and for impassioned, critical discussions about literature. And our 4 shortlisted writers give me great hope for the future. Now I'd like to invite the Chair of the Charlotte Aiken Trust, Sebastian Folkes, onto the stage.
Not all prizes, literary prizes, are great, but this is a very, very good one, and it was a perfect fit for us, and that's why I'm so delighted that we are here today. It's a great prize, and I know that we have a great winner tonight. I don't know who that winner is, but I know that it will be a great winner, because I've read all 4 shortlisted books twice, as I boasted last night at Waterstones when interviewing the 4 shortlisted authors. And if you weren't there, you missed a treat, because they were so great. They talked with such passion and insight and clarity about their books. Obviously it's a bit intimidating for an old guy like me to be interviewing young people, and I asked an author's WhatsApp group that I'm on, what on earth should I ask these young writers? And one of the most outspoken people on it said, why don't you ask them how you get a single remote control to manage all your devices? I said, they're not that young, but they are that great.
Oxblood by Tom Benn is a beautifully crafted, atmospheric story about a dysfunctional Mancunian crime clan set in the 1980s, decaying mills, rising unemployment, and rampant drug dealing. This atmospheric novel explores the legacy of violent men through 3 generations of working class women left behind. It is a brutal, poignantly rendered exploration of domesticity and violence. And the judges were incredibly impressed by the way in which Tom was able to conjure this large cast of memorable characters, especially the bruised and jaded women at the centre of this book. It's a novel that has been rendered with such care. It really does get under your skin. It's also a deeply engrossing crime saga, which confirms Tom as the new master of Northern Noir. Congratulations, Tom.
Very quick question, Tom. Your book is about these women who are left alone to fend without the ghastly men who are all in prison or dead. Are you telling us something about the society as well as the people?
I guess it is a kind of critique about society, but the society that the women are from is also this society. You know, I don't think it begins and ends on a council estate, or it's particular to a region or a place in time. I think it's something we're all probably complicit in, and the female characters in the novel themselves are also complicit in each other's oppression. It's not Oxblood isn't really a novel with perfect victims or perfect villains. I think if you're going to attempt to critique anything, particularly a novel, you don't want it to be a polemic. You know, you have to kind of embrace and acknowledge those tensions and ambivalences. I guess it is. God, that sounds fun, doesn't it?
There's some good party scenes in it. Tom, congratulations, it's fantastic.
Cheers, thank you.
Larger Than an Orange by Lucy Burns is an unorthodox, unflinching, and deeply moving memoir, which was one of the Sunday Times Books of the Year in 2021. When Lucy found herself pregnant in 2017, she knew immediately that she wanted to have an abortion. Larger Than Orange documents that painful medical procedure, but also tracks the people she told about it, referring to them only by numbers. What's so interesting about the book is that it examines the dichotomy between abortion as a political statement and abortion as an individual experience. The judges greatly admired the risk that Lucy took with form and subject matter to tell a complex, ambivalent, and highly original account of the fallout from her own abortion. This is a story about what it feels like to not feel what you're supposed to feel. It's upsetting, sometimes chilling, but it's also fascinating and even playful, with some wonderful, funny asides. Congratulations, Lucy.
It's a very quick question for you. Your publisher describes this as a memoir, but we also see the phrase prose, poem, diary, all sorts of descriptions floating around. How did you pick the form, the shape this book takes?
The hybridity of the book, I guess I'd probably call it like a hybrid memoir, was key from the start, and really that came about because I sort of wasn't able to piece together what happened in a linear way. It was too difficult, it was too painful, and so on. So all those sort of elements, those different modes of writing became kind of essential for me to express the things I wanted to express. So the prose poetry was there from the start. That was really about sort of getting into the sort of fragmented nature of my thinking at that time. The story element, I think, that kind of refers to the elements of artifice in the book. I had a quite clear sense from the start of the things I was prepared to talk about and show, and the things that I wanted to twist or hide or kind of not include at all. And then the diary form, that came very late, and that was really born out of a necessity to make this experience readable and intelligible to other people. So yeah, a mix of modes.
Well, the result is remarkable. I couldn't believe anything quite so harrowing could be quite so easy to read. So many congratulations.
Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer is an astonishing first novel. A lyrical, captivating study of mortality, desire, and forgiveness. It tells the story of a woman who is dying of terminal cancer. It won the Desmond Elliott Prize in 2022 and was longlisted the Booker Prize. Maps is narrated by Leah, who is also dying of cancer, and it also uses the narrative form with the members of her family. And the other narrator we hear comes in as a mischievous voice, which may or may not be the the cancer that's killing her. With linguistic innovations and typographical tricks, this tale of one family's heartbreak is boldly inventive in style. The judges praised the utterly uncompromising nature of the book's execution. We were bowled over by the sophistication and verve of the language and the ideas at play. And I personally was fascinated by how someone so young could pack in so much life experience. For a book about death, it's surprisingly funny too. Congratulations, Maddie.
And Maddie, one more torturing question. We're nearly through, and then you can all get drunk. It's true. It's a very complicated book, and people have talked of it as life writing, as a tribute to your own mother, as a novel, and so on. And I wondered, how did you just arrive at the way in which it's told, or did you seek advice, editorial advice, and feedback?
Yeah, the novel's form sort of emerged gradually throughout the writing process. The whole thing sort of began as these like scrappy prose poems that were taking place within the landscape of a woman's deteriorating body. But I knew that for it to be readable and for readers to keep turning the page, I needed to set it within the context of a human story, a more traditional narrative. So it was always going to be a novel that tested what a text can be, what language can do in the face of death. But it was also primarily concerned with the connections between textual and human bodies, the way that books themselves have anatomies and interior systems that all function very differently but work towards, making a whole. And so, yeah, and then it's just voice, really. In my case, this shape-shifting narrator that ended up sort of handing me the novel's form and kind of took my hand and sort of dragged me joyously through the writing process, and there was nothing that I, nor any kind of editor later down the line, could do to stop it.
I'm glad they didn't stop her, because this narrator brings us to know these people in a way that I've never really experienced in a book before. So many congratulations, it's a wonderful achievement.
Now you've all had a chance to see and hear every one of our shortlisted authors, and you can see why each one of them would be a worthy winner. I think the chair of our judges, Andrew Holgate, felt that it was one of the strongest shortlists he had ever seen, and I felt that I could read any of these multiple times and get excited about them, and I'd be extremely happy if any of them won. But the judges did finally decide. One book for us stood out from the others, and it gives me great pleasure to say that the 2022 Sunday Times Charlotte Aitken Young Writer of the Year is Tom Benn.
Yeah, bloody hell, I thought that might be I read the wrong name there, like a La La Land Moonlight situation. It is Oxblood. Yeah, I mean, Oxblood is probably the furthest thing you can get from a trendy novel now, stylistically, narratively, maybe even ideologically. It's not really very marketable, relatable prose. It kind of risks inhabiting perspectives that I have known and loved and lived alongside, but are not my own. It's the kind of really messy moral possibilities of the novel. That's what, of novels, of novel writing, novel reading, that's what I'm in it for. The stuff that doesn't make it too easy for the reader or the writer. So I'd really like to thank the judges just for picking it. That's amazing, I still can't believe it. Thanks to my agent, Isabel, my editor at Bloomsbury, Allegra, just for taking a chance on a really weird regional working class story when nobody else would as well. I'd also like to thank my mother and father as well for everything, my wife and daughter for everything else. I'd also like to thank my first ever creative writing mentor, Andrew Cowan, who's now my colleague at UEA. And Andrew won this same prize about 30 years ago with his own working class regional story that refused to pander to gatekeepers. And Andrew winning this prize meant that he got a job at UEA, which meant eventually he got to teach me, which meant I got to read his novel. And then that kind of gave me permission to write about where I was from. So these things do actually matter. You know, they have a ripple effect in the world, and for that I'm really grateful for that, you know. So support this prize, support the humanities, support UEA. Cheers.
So that was the ceremony, a really lovely result and a great speech by Tom Benn. Coincidentally, just before the announcement was made, I was having a lovely long chat with Tom Benn and his partner, and yeah, he's a really great guy, and I've not read his novel yet, but I'm really interested to now. So I'd love to know if you've read his book, or if you've read any other books on this short list, what you think of the winner, or if you're interested in reading any of them now, please let me know in the comments below. But just before I set off, I got a goodie bag, and in it, really excitingly, is the new paperback of Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies. This is really lovely. So yeah, that's really exciting to see. But really congratulations to all of the authors, and yeah, Tom Benn especially. So thank you for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.